Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. Thank you. And we've got a wonderful day here to acknowledge the potential of people freezing to death in the winter. We were going to have an opening prayer by Jo White, but she hasn't arrived. So we do want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Cynics people. This is Donald, and Donald is going to help me. First of all, I want to say, when did we start to believe that some lives are worth less than others? It is totally hypocritical to complain about the homeless problem if you are not an active part of the solution to that problem.
We need to have a transition house opened as an emergency shelter now.
Whether we agree or not with some life choices has no bearing on the fact that they are human beings and our brothers and sisters, our sons and daughters, our mothers and fathers, and they still need to be safe and warm. This is a moral issue, not a judgmental one. No man can change their yesterdays, only their tomorrows. Let's make sure these folks have a tomorrow.
We need to have the transition house opened as an emergency shelter now. In Canada, we have a serious problem. In Toronto Tuesday, a woman froze to death on the steps of For Shelter. That brings a total of 8 in 1 month in that city alone. That is 8 people too many. Are we willing to allow even one person to die from hypothermia before we do something? We need to have the transition house opened as an emergency shelter now.
The City of Grand Forks Community Charter says it has a vested interest and responsibility towards the well-being of all its citizens. It doesn't discriminate between the housed and the unhoused. We need to ask if the city is meeting the needs of all residents. Are they fostering an environment of learning, tolerance, and growth? Are we a livable city?
We need to have the transition house open as an emergency shelter now. We have a whole new level of intolerance. While social media may be the first blamed, it's our interactions and our inactions and our condolences, or that condones it. Help us show that the actions and the words on social media are not representative of all Grand Forks. We need to have the transition house opened as an emergency shelter now.
Will the city help us and truly acknowledge their leadership role in the community and take responsibility? Let us all work together to at least promote learning, tolerance, and growth. A wise elder once said, "Soldiers take sides, warriors take a stand. Let us now be warriors." I am now going to ask individuals from the homeless community to speak on their experiences. Who would like to come forward first? Yes.
Hi. It's crazy. It's so cold out there at night. People are freezing. In a motorhome, it's colder in the motorhome than it is outside. It's just an ice bucket. It's freezing cold. It's ridiculous. It's inhuman.
Speak about the water conditions. How do you handle washing and drinking? And finding a washroom. We have all these people here who are living rough, and they're living rough not by choice, but by necessity, because we don't have a safe place for them to live.
Yeah, I'll say something.
Okay, I just wanted to say one thing. you know, like, we got all this stuff we're throwing away at the dump, and there's people up there living on the hill there, and they got no, you know, like all that building materials we're throwing away, it's kind of a waste, you know. Maybe they can give them to the homeless people, you know, and start thinking outside the box as what we're throwing away, you know. And another thing I gotta say is like maybe like some small wood stoves, you know. Those people need like small wood stoves, you know, something to stick in their little shack. All that insulation we throw away at the dump, you know, these people have to go in at midnight and steal the goddamn garbage we throw away. How stupid is that? Stealing a little bit of copper because they're fucking broke. They need a fucking whatever, you know? So anyways, that's all I gotta say. Okay, have a good day. Bye.
So there's another voice. There's another option, is that we support folks in their tent cities. We allow them to be legal. We allow them to be their own community. And we also make sure that they have access to the needs: water, toilet, garbage disposal, and building materials. Because if we're not going to give them a shelter to keep from freezing, then maybe we need to give them the materials to live adequately.
I'd also like to make a point as well. Sorry. Oh, sure. As well as providing a valuable service, that homeless shelter, the warming shelter, also provided jobs for about a dozen or so of citizens, Grand Forks citizens. And this decision put these people on the EI line. And a lot of them did not have enough weeks for EI. Is it proper for the city of Grand Forks to not only punish the homeless, but also punish the employees that were working in this valuable service, providing a service to the homeless? Once that shelter was closed, BC Housing pulled any funding that they were given. I don't think that that's fair. These people that were working there pay taxes, and they are citizens of Grand Forks. You've not only let these citizens down, but you've let these workers down. Shame on you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you all so much for coming out here. This is such important things that we're doing today, putting our foot down. We want to send a message to the city and the province that these people are freezing to death. Where's our humanity? I know we all have it. Does our city council have humanity? I realize the mayor does. Thank God for the mayor. I observed multiple meetings with the Social Services Advisory Group, and I know the intention is good. But what I saw happen is everything get lost in bureaucracy. Timelines. Need to do this, need to do that. Okay, let's get together next week and talk about it. No, people are freezing now. People need homes now. The people sitting in those committees, and I love some of them because I'm friends with them, they understand, but a lot don't. When they wake up every morning, I've been waking up every morning and looking at the thermometer, and I never used to do that. And I will be so heartbroken if anybody dies. So what do we need to do to make sure nobody dies?
Homes for the homeless.
Give them shelter now.
So I was born and raised in Grand Forks. My family lives here, and I went down a pretty dark path in my life, and I ended up being a drug addicted homeless person in my hometown. And I didn't find the resources that I needed or the support that I needed in this town. So I had to leave. And Nelson did help me, even though they were helping their own. Castlegar ended up helping me at one time too. So did Trail. But I wanted to be here because my mom and dad are here, my sister's here, my niece and my nephew are here. And, you know, I hear people say, like, you know, pack them up and ship them out. You know, why? Because we've got to take care of our own and our own community. And to group people together, like I read on Facebook, you know, these thieves and these troublemakers, everybody has a story. It's not fair to group everybody together. One person has a story and nobody knows anybody's story unless they've walked in somebody's shoes. And if Castlegar is taking care of their own, and Nelson's taking care of their own, and Trail is taking care of their own, and they all have shelters that they can go to, why doesn't Grand Forks? It's sad. It's really, really sad.
On the subject of thievery and stuff like that, yeah, there are some no goods around town that have caused problems. And I know what they say, you stand together, you get painted with the same brush, but it's not necessarily fair. The majority of us are just folks that have come on some hard times. Some of us got mental issues, some of us got addiction. And the other half of us are either dead or dying, so you don't have to worry about it for too long. But the fact of the matter is, just because there's some people who cause trouble out there, it doesn't mean we're all there to cause trouble or whatnot. Most of us just want to live our lives the way we can. Some of us are down on our luck and could just use some work, just a little bit of a helping hand. You know, places like to lay our head like a shelter would be wonderful at this time of year. Dempseyville is a good place. A place up on Moto, like, you know, it may seem like an inconvenience to some of you, but I can guarantee you the people up in those places are having a lot more of an inconvenience than you are. And you know, we just need a place to lay our head like the rest of you. So if you could just, you know, show a little bit of heart, and, you know, maybe we'll surprise you. Right? We haven't been this way our entire lives, and it's not like we intend to the rest of our lives.
Would anybody else like to say a few words on this topic? Anybody?
I have something to say.
Okay, keep coming. She's got one more thing to say.
I just wanted to say that I have just recently been told that I am accepted into the new low-income housing, and and you know, I've been drug-free now for quite a few years, and me knowing that I have my own roof over my head has now given me the opportunity to concentrate on more areas of my life. You know, somebody that that is sleeping in a ditch every night, it's pretty damn depressing. And now that I have the opportunity and I've got some hope, I can now concentrate on doing better things and giving back to my community like I'm trying to do now. So you see, change does help.
Hello. I just wanted to say about my personal experience. I was in an industrial accident and lost my condo, my car, my life. And a lot of people don't realize that we're really truly just one paycheck away from being homeless ourselves, just one accident away from being homeless ourselves. So please, please show compassion to others. Thank you.
Are there? Yes, please, please. Come on.
My name's Ivan. I'm a guest
here. I'm glad to be able to stand with the community who are speaking up and fighting back against the hatred and pressures and austerity logics that cut services from people's basic supports and push them further into hiding. I'm an organizer with a group called Alliance Against Displacement that's mostly been active in the Lower Mainland, and in the last month we did a tour through the Okanagan, up through Kamloops and Kelowna, and we ended here last week and met with people up at Modo and over at Dembskieville. And it was hard to figure out what the lay of the land is here because people had a lot of mixed up ideas about what they were being promised. When I first spoke to people, they said the province is opening some new low-income housing, some new affordable housing. And I looked online and it was actually started to be open just a couple days ago on Friday the 15th. But for all the talk of the affordable housing being opened in the new modulars there, which are the most beautiful modulars of any modular project I've ever seen anywhere in BC. Most of them are lousy mining trailers, and these ones are well designed and have balconies and everything. Only 8 out of those units are affordable at welfare shelter rate or for people who are on old age security pension. 8 out of something like 50 units are for people who are low income and vulnerable to homelessness. That doesn't mean we don't need rental housing that's outside of the market, because in this community there's an absolute absence of it. Not just for people who are on the street, but for working class people in general. I went to the Imperial Hotel, which is where I understand that some low-income people find a place to live in the short term or sometimes month by month. And they offered me a room there when I told them I was here for the month, working a job. They offered me a room at $1,100. But when a friend of mine who's on the street went in and asked the next day, suddenly that room didn't exist anymore. Suddenly the manager of that building said, "We don't rent to you people here." He said he'd never seen this woman before, but he'd seen her kind walking up and down the street using drugs. That's discrimination. So people in this community, like people in communities all throughout British Columbia, face 2 big problems. One is that the government has cut services to low-income people. Over the last 30 years, from the federal government on down, they've passed the buck. They said lower levels of government can house people. Well, now who's holding the buck is poor people themselves. From the federal government that cut funding for social housing in 1994 to the provincial government here that cut it in 2002 and then in 2012, now the people who provide housing for the poor are other poor people. Now the people who provide housing for the homeless are people who found housing, who have their friends crash on their couches or stay in extra rooms or sleep on the floor. The people who get evicted for bearing the burden of having to house the homeless. Now who houses the homeless is people who've come into money and have a big property outside of town, who put up a dozen trailers on their property and charge people welfare rate to stay in those trailers. Dembskieville, I visited Dembskieville a couple of times, and the people who live out there say that it saved their lives. But what's the response of the regional district to the existence of Dembskieville? Is that in April they served everyone there with notices saying that the whole property will be demolished in April of 2020. In the downtown east side of Vancouver, there's hotels that are the worst slums you can imagine. I know people who have gotten infections from cockroaches falling out of light sockets and nesting in their eyes in the night. And the city doesn't shut down those buildings, even though those buildings are horrible slums, because the alternative is pushing people out to the street. How can the regional district here talk about displacing Modo Camp? How can they talk about displacing Dembskieville when there is no alternative? If you don't want people on the street, don't push them out of the places that they've been forced to create in order to survive. There is a conspiracy that focuses on attacking the lives of low-income people because the story is that low-income people don't matter. The story is that if you're not working a productive job, then you are useless, that you're subhuman. This is the message given to us when governments cut funding to social housing and to the basic needs that people depend on. There is a story also, an old story in this country, that Indigenous people are just in the way of taking their land, and that their lives have been under attack. Their children have been taken and apprehended into residential schools and into foster care systems, and then put out on the street to die because their lives also, in the face of a profit-oriented society, are worth nothing. Again, it is our communities themselves that hold up each other and that create the infrastructure of survival. And when we do, the city governments, the vigilantes, they come for us too. But today we're saying that we're defending these spaces, and there's not anyone in any one community that has to defend it alone, but we'll back each other up. because we're facing a global problem. And this struggle here in Grand Forks is one front in that global fight. Now, the very minimum the province can do is step in, not wait for the city's permission, but the province should shame the city council and step in and open a shelter right away. It's a terrible thing to fight for a shelter because shelters are not homes. But if they don't bring people indoors, they'll die. So that means they need to open the shelter immediately. The shelter's there, the building's there, it's a publicly owned building that's sitting empty. What unconscionable excuse is there to keep a publicly owned building empty while people are on the street? There is none.
Give us the key. Give us the key.
Let's chant that. So Lorraine says, give us a key. Everyone respond, give us the key, or open the shelter now. Lorraine say, you say, give us the key. Everyone else say, open the shelter now.
Give us the key. Open the shelter now. Give us the key. Open the shelter now. Give us the key. Open the shelter now. Woo.
I don't think I can say anything more after all these wonderful people have spoken. So I think this is the conclusion of our rally today, and I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for showing up and caring. Please stay for a cup of hot chocolate.
And we all want to thank you, Lorraine, because we know she has opened her home so people can go and have showers and feel warm and feel loved and feel appreciated. So thanks, Lorraine.
And if I might be able to say one more thing, when it comes to places like Dembskieville, when I first moved down here, I heard a lot of horror stories about the place. I never actually thought I'd end up moving down there. The fact of the matter is we need more people like Peter Dembski who's willing to open his home and to the inconvenience of people like us. He may seem like a bit of a character the way he is, but he's shown more heart than most people around here, that he's opened his home and his property and given us a place where we can lay our heads.